The full list for battle partners was revealed a little bit ago, and I'm going to be honest, this video is going to be pretty short because I preemptively looked through the set, and I'm going to be honest, there really isn't a lot going for this set. It is pretty mid at best. I'm not going to be talking about any of the trainers Pokemon in this video, as they'll be having their own video which might come out before this one, and there's maybe a few cards that I don't talk about because I am planning their own dedicated videos. So without any dilly-dally or shilly-shally, let's get in because this video is probably going to be pretty short. First up is Maractus with its explosive needle ability. It says that if this Pokemon in the active spot is KO'd by damage from an opponent's Pokemon, you put 6 damage counters on that Pokemon. So if it's KO'd, you basically do revenge damage of 60, and that goes very well with its attack that does 20 damage, and then during your opponent's next turn, that Pokemon can't retreat. So you basically force one of your opponent's Pokemon into the active and basically kind of force them to attack with it, because if they don't, it's just going to be locked there slowly taking damage. And then if they do KO this Pokemon, they're going to take a bit of damage in return. Pretty decent card, not sure if it will see play, might see play in sort of like a stun, stall type of option, may see play in some decks that can easily manipulate and move around damage, but it's a decent card that was worth talking about. Next up is a Selgor with its cast off poison, does 70 damage, and then your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned and confused, and then you switch this Pokemon with one of your benched Pokemon. So a Selgor can do a pretty decent amount of damage, not only poison your opponent's Pokemon, but also confuse it, which means that if they want to attack with it, they have to flip a coin, and if they don't hit it, then they take even more damage, and then you switch this Pokemon out. So you could do some decent damage and then switch into a stun or stall type Pokemon like Klefki, maybe Fluttermane or something like Mimikyu, and now your opponent is basically going to have to switch out that Pokemon in the active or flip a coin to see if it attacks. Pretty okay card, it's not the best, but it is pretty decent for what it is. Next up, Ludicolo with its Virtual Samba ability that says that your Pokemon in play get 40 HP. This ability does not stack. So while Ludicolo is on the bench, all of your Pokemon have 40 extra HP, which is a decent amount of HP that some Evolution EX Pokemon have, like 320, 330. So now they're going to be ever so close to that 400 mark. It is a stage 2, so it will take a bit of time getting into play. Plus with the amount of item locks we have in the format, using Rare Candy might be a little bit troublesome. So you may have to evolve into Lombre and then to Ludicolo. Not really sure what decks this card could see play in. Maybe some sort of high HP, high like stall type decks or something like that. But it was just worth mentioning. Next up is Bayonet. With its Cursed Words attack for 1 Psychic, your opponent shuffles 3 cards from their hand into the deck. This card is actually pretty decent when combined with other hand disruptive type cards like Hand Trimmer and Zeroic's Machinations. Especially Zeroic's Machinations, as you can force your opponent down to 3 cards in hand and then use Cursed Words to basically shuffle those cards into the deck, and now your opponent is drawing 1 card for the turn. Very strong attack that will probably see play inside of Bayonet decks, or just inside of control decks in general. Next up, Metagross has the Joint Beam attack, does 130 damage and 150 more damage if you have Beldum and Matang on the bench. So you can do 280 damage for 2 Psychic Energy, but you have to have Beldum and Matang on the bench as well. But if you're playing a Metagross deck, you're obviously going to be playing those cards. Pretty decent, pretty high amount of damage, though it does have a pretty specific condition to meet, though that can be very easy to do. Say you draw Matang, Metagross, Rare Candy, there you go, you're pretty much ready to use it. But again, item locks are a thing in the format, so you may have to evolve into Matang, then into Metagross, but it is a pretty decent card that could see play. Not sure what it would see play in, but again, it's just worth mentioning. Mamoswine, this one has the Mammoth Cry ability that says that once during your turn you can search your deck for a Pokemon, put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. And then its attack, Reverberating March, does 180, then 40 more damage for each benched Stage 2 Pokemon in play. So if you're playing a Stage 2 deck, like Charizard or like Dragapult, you can do an extra 40 damage for each of those Stage 2 Pokemon in play. Plus the ability to just search your deck for any Pokemon you want every single turn is very good on the lines of Pidgeot EX, which let you search for any card. Plus it's pretty beefy at 340 HP. It does require 2 Fighting Energy, so I imagine it will see play alongside fighting decks, or you may have to throw a few Crispin in and a couple of Fighting Energy, but I mainly think this card will see play because of its ability. What decks it will see play in, again, that's all up in the air at the moment. Next up is Lycanroc and also Spike Energy. So Spike Energy is a new special energy. It provides a colorless energy, and if the Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active spot and is attacked, you put 2 damage counters on your opponent's attacking Pokemon. So this could actually see play alongside Maractus because it requires a colorless energy, so you could attack, do 20 damage, and if your opponent attacks it, they take 20, and if it's knocked out, they take 60. Keep in mind that's every time it's attacked, so you're basically just building up damage constantly. But the reason why I mentioned Lycanroc with this card is it has the Spike Cloak ability that says you may use this ability when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon. You can attach up to 2 Spike Energy cards from your discard pile to this Pokemon. And then its Clutch Fang does 40 damage, plus 40 more damage for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. So if you have 3 Spike Energy on this Pokemon and your opponent attacks it, granted it doesn't get knocked out, they're going to take 80 damage, and then you do 40 damage, and then 40 times 8, which is a lot. However, I'm not sure if this card will see play because it is pretty flimsy and pretty easy to one-hit KO, but it was a very interesting combination of cards that, again, it all depends because we're not only going to be going into a new set, but also a new rotation, so we're going to be losing a couple of, like, damaging cards here and there. But we do have stuff like Iron Valiant, which says it can put, I think, 1 or 2 damage counters on, so you could do that and then bring this in and do a pretty decent amount of damage. Next up is Pangoro. This one could see play as a pretty decent stun option. Its Torment attack does 30 damage, and then you choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks, and it can't use that attack during the next turn. Most Pokemon in the format have only 1 attack, some have 2, so you could very easily attack with Pangoro and then prevent your opponent from using that Pokemon's attack, which means that they're going to have to switch into another copy of that card or just another Pokemon in general. Also, if you do it against a Pokemon, say like Hopsazashian says that it can't use one of its attacks the next turn, so you can use it, put the restriction on the other attacks, so now it can't use either of its attacks, and your opponent's going to have to switch into a completely different Pokemon. Next up is Magearna. This one has the auto heal ability that says as long as this Pokemon's on the bench, whenever you attach an energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon, you heal 90 damage from it. So this could see play in pretty much any deck as a way to heal away a huge chunk of damage when you attach an energy. Keep in mind it's whenever you attach an energy from the hand, so if you attach one from the discard or you move one from another Pokemon, it won't trigger the ability. But the ability to just heal 90 damage from one of your Pokemon could be the difference between it being knocked out or it surviving. The only issue is that it does have 90 HP, so you can't buddy puff in it, you will have to nest ball it, but it could see play in pretty much any deck as a way to heal away some damage that your opponent has dealt to your Pokemon, especially with the amount of bench hitting cards we'll be having in the format. Next up is Salamence EX. This is a stage 2 with the Wide Blast and Dragon Impact attack. Wide Blast for a fire and 2 colorless does 50 damage to all of your opponent's benched Pokemon. Very, very strong attack, if a little bit of a high attack cost with 3 energy. And then its Dragon Impact for a fire, a water and 2 colorless does 300 damage, but you discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. This card does seem good, but I'm not really sure what partner it's going to have in order to power itself up. You could alleviate some of the cost with stuff like Counter Gain or Neo Upper Energy, but the cost is just a bit too high, and also Dragon Impact discards 2 energy, so I'm not really sure what support this card could see play with. Maybe Druddigon, which is another card coming in this set. So Dragon Fury lets you attach a basic fire energy from your discard pile to one of your Dragon Pokemon, so it could see play alongside Salamence, but it's on an attack, so you do have to attack and then attach, and then your opponent could very easily just bring up Salamence or the pre-evolution and just knock it out, and then you lose that energy again. So with the right support, this card could see play, because it does have some pretty strong attacks at its disposal, but as of right now, it's probably just going to end up as bulk. This card is probably going to be extremely good and expanded because of Regidrago, because we're going to have the rotation, so Regidrago will leave the format when this card becomes legal, because Regidrago running around with an attack that can do 50 damage to all bench Pokemon, and it already has Dragapult, and an attack that does 300 damage, yeah, I'm glad Regidrago is leaving before this card becomes legal. And then the final Pokemon we're going to talk about is Dudunsparce EX. It has the adversarial thing that's, they say, tail attack that does 60 damage for each of your opponent's Pokemon EX in play. So if you're up against a deck that plays a lot of EX Pokemon, something like Raging Bolt, which pretty much only plays EX Pokemon, you can do a lot of damage for only a single energy. Granted, it's only EX Pokemon, even though V Pokemon are going to be leaving the format, but it's still a pretty decent card. Even with only like 3 EX Pokemon, that's still 180 damage for 1 energy, but the more the merrier. It is a stage 1, so you obviously will need to evolve into it, but it does have a pretty beefy stat line of 270 HP. Plus, there are quite a few decks that are playing the Dunsparce with Runaway Draw, so this could be an option for you to go into instead. And now moving on to the one item card that we're going to talk about, that is Exchange Ticket. It says you count your prize cards, shuffle them, and put them on the bottom of the deck, and then you take that many cards from the top of your deck and put them as your new prize cards. So this card is decent, but also pretty high risk, high reward, if you know what I mean. Because if you know something that you need is in your prizes, you can put those on the bottom of the deck, so now you have them, but then you're also putting the top cards of your deck as your new prizes, which could also include something that you may need. So it's a very interesting card, but I'm not really sure if it's worth playing. Maybe if it were down to like 1 prize card, you could use this, get that prize card back if it's something that you really need, like it's your ace spec, or it's a support Pokemon, or it's a supporter that you play only 1 copy of, and then you put the top card on top of your deck. Maybe it's something that you don't care about, and then obviously you can find that card and use it. But it'd probably see players maybe like a 1 of, even if that. Next up is Iris's Fighting Spirit. It says you can only use this card if you discard a card from your hand, and you draw cards until you have 6 cards in your hand. Pretty decent draw support. It does require you to discard a card from your hand, so you need itself and another card, but being able to draw a fresh hand of 6 is pretty good. And then we have Brock's Scouting, which says you can either search your deck for 2 basic Pokemon, or search your deck for an evolution Pokemon and put them into your hand. This is pretty much kind of a replacement for Lance inside of like Dragapult as a way to search out an evolution Pokemon, but it can also search out 2 basic Pokemon. It can be any basic Pokemon, so you could search out an EX Pokemon and also just, you know, a basic Pokemon. But I think in terms of searching out evolutions, Shark is better because it searches 2. But I can see a reason why you would play this card, because it's basically a double nest ball on a supporter card, but it can also act as a way to get an evolution Pokemon, which is not restrictive like other ones. So you can search for an EX, or you can just search for a stage 1 non-EX type of thing. And then the final card is Levencia. It says that once during each player's turn, you can put 2 basic lightning energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. So lightning decks get a little bit of energy recursion, but it's also reciprocant, however you say it, for each player. So if you're also playing lightning energy, you can get those lightning energy back. So this will probably see playing stuff like Miraidon or any other lightning based decks we see in the future, or any decks that play lightning energy. And that is it. Yep, there is not a whole lot to talk about in this set. It's pretty underwhelming, to be honest. The main highlight of the set is, of course, the Trainers Pokemon, which, as I've said, will be getting their own video. It'll either be out before this one or after this one, so I will talk about those cards in that video. And any other future set list reviews will also have the Trainers cards in them. I mainly just want to make a separate video about the first wave that we will be getting, similar to how I did the Stellar Pokemon video. So I'd like to thank you all for watching. Let me know in the comments your thoughts about this set. I personally think it's incredibly underwhelming. Our first set of the year, and we barely have anything that's like decently splashable inside of the decks that are going to survive rotation. It's going to be a very, very weird format, I feel, because a lot of the good decks, stuff like Raging Bolt, stuff like Archelodon, are basically going to lose nothing and be at full power, and then stuff like Gardevoir, Dragapult, Charizard are going to lose some pretty good support cards and probably end up being mid-tier decks. And there's only really one new deck that's going to arise from this, and that's probably going to be Hops Zacian. I'd like to thank you all for watching again. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe, all of that nonsense, and I will see you in the next video, whatever it may be. Take care.